call me Bill. Yes, they call me Bill. And I'm standing here on Capitol. Oh!
In his 1976 book, The Selfish Gene, evolutionary biologist Richard Dawkins coined the term meme. This was before he became god of the godless fedora tippers. He was most well known at this time for his contributions to our understanding of the interplay between genetics and Darwin's survival of the fittest. Genes are units of heredity made up of unique and specific DNA sequences in the chromosomes of cells' nuclei. These provide a manual for protein structures and eventually almost everything from skin color to your jawline to your propensity to get into fistfights at the gas station. However, memes are cultural units of transmission rather than biological ones. This goes back to the ever-discussed nature versus nurture debate. Speaking of nature, even some animals have memes. Marine biologists in Washington state have observed orcas wearing salmon on their heads as some sort of fashion fad. Some scientists believe that this was a fad that was meant to signal abundance of resources. Others think that it's just for play, and I personally think it's due to all the weed and psychedelics consumed in the Seattle metropolitan area. The reason why memes are called, well, memes, rather than genes, comes from the Greek word memenia, which I'm almost certainly mispronouncing. Memenia means that which is imitated. Unlike genes, which are involuntarily inherited from our parents, memes are voluntarily adopted from our wider social surroundings. This would spur the rise of the study known as memetics in the wider field of cultural evolution, which proved to be rather controversial, as memes don't operate in a random, unintentional manner in the same way that genetic mutations do. What is not controversial, though, is that the term meme would gain mass popularity during the late 2000s and early 2010s along the rise of social media. However, memes, in accordance with their original definition, did not begin with social media. Since I started off with mentioning Richard Dawkins, a key figure of the new atheist movement, it's worth mentioning that the anti-Christian memes far predate whatever was posted on r/atheism. Here lies the blasphemous graffiti found nearby Palatine Hill in Rome. It is the oldest surviving depiction of Jesus, known going all the way back to roughly 200 years after his death. It depicts Jesus with the head of what seems to be an ass. No, not that ass. No, not that ass. Yes, this ass. This art was most likely created by a pagan who was mocking the religion whose founder was executed by the Roman Empire. Little did this person know that his religion would eventually take over the empire he resided in. This is an example of a pre-internet meme. Other more modern examples include the various personifications of states used in early political cartoons, most famously Uncle Sam, who represents the US government. There are other national examples of this, such as the British John Bull and the Canadian Johnny Canuck. Animals in political cartoons were and still are common today, with the GOP having an elephant as their symbol and the Democrats having a donkey as their symbol. Same goes for countries, with Russia being represented by bears, China by pandas and dragons, and the French with a rooster, which I guess makes sense since they chickened out during World War II. These were usually featured in newspapers and magazines alongside peanut cartoons, Dilbert, and other comic strips, which became meme factories in and of themselves. Just look at what happened to Dilbert's creator.
Nearly half of all blacks are not okay with white people, according to this poll, not according to me. That's a hate group, and I don't want to have anything to do with them. The best advice I would give to white people is to get the hell away from black people.
Fast forward to the 90s.
On your mark, get set. We're riding on the internet, cyberspace, set free. Hello, virtual reality.
Interactive appetite, searching for a website, a window to the world, got to get online.
Take a spin, now you're in with the techno set. You're going surfing on the internet.
Here is the website for Bill Clinton and Al Gore's 1996 election campaign. No spicy memes here. As you can see, there are no TikTok shorts either. It is a simple, unidirectional website which provides information related to the campaign at a time when television, magazines, newspapers, and radio were far more important.
Sad. All Bob Dole offers are negative attacks. President Clinton appointed a 4-star general drug czar, expanded school anti-drug programs. Dole tried to slash school anti-drug programs 50%, voted against creating a drug czar. President Clinton is protecting our children. Break up violent gangs, drug test teens before getting a driver's license, curfews and school uniforms to instill discipline. All Bob Dole offers are negative attacks. President Clinton is protecting our children, our values.
By the early 2000s, more and more households in the developed world had home computers and access to the internet, but it was still secondary to old media. But that didn't mean that there weren't any sweet political memes to savor. George Bush was president at the time, and let's just say he wasn't renowned for his oratory skills.
Enemies are innovative and resourceful, and so are we. They never stop thinking about new ways to harm our country and our people, and neither do we.
These crimes against the English language were mocked on late-night media, usually splicing them up with inspirational speeches by Roosevelt and Kennedy. These found their ways into early internet culture, oftentimes on personal websites and early social media platforms like MySpace and LiveJournal. These today are now known as Bushisms. While we think of memes today as a visual form of media, namely JPEGs and PNG files, they can also be iconic, meaning that they're auditory.
These immigrants have helped transform 13 small colonies into a great and growing nation of more than 300 people.
Speaking of the early 2000s, in 2001, the political compass test would be created. On the x-axis, you would have social policy, authoritarian versus libertarian. And on the y-axis, you'd have economic policy, markets versus equity. In the upper left quadrant, you have Stalin. In the upper right quadrant, you have a guy with a tiny mustache. With the bottom right quadrant, you have business moguls and guys who get aroused by their gun collection. And in the bottom left, you have perpetually high, stinky hippies. This quiz/compass/meme has had a profound impact on how people use their beliefs as a source of not only their voting record and policy standpoints, but also as a form of their own identity in the internet age. The compass has been memeified in countless variations. As an urban planner, here is one for city planners. Here is one for South Africans. Here is another one for Game of Thrones characters. Other quizzes would pop up. Most notably the 8 values test, which covers equity versus markets, nation versus the globe, liberty versus authority, tradition versus progress. In 2004, the US would undergo another presidential election of George W. Bush versus John Kerry. This would result in the meme of Jesus Land map. Red states which voted for Bush would be referred to as Jesus Land, or in other variations, Redneckistan or Dumbfuckistan, or Dumbassistan, while states which voted for Kerry would be called Canada, or would be referred to as the United States of Canada or Soviet Canuckistan. In other versions, conservative Canadian provinces like Alberta and Saskatchewan were included as parts of Jesus Land. While it's easy to pass off this meme as just a meme, it does encapsulate numerous complex social, economic, and political affairs. In Edward Graebe's book, Regions Apart, The Four Societies of Canada and the United States, he provides substantial evidence that the north/west coast of the United States has more in common with English-speaking Canada than it does with the South, and that English-speaking Canadians have more in common with the northern United States than they do with French-speaking Quebec. Another truth the meme encapsulated was the wider and emerging divide between red states and blue states, as well as the ever-growing political polarization and culture wars, which would turn into a shitstorm during the 2010s. In the mid-2000s, social media took off en masse, with Facebook coming out in 2004 for university students and quickly kicking MySpace off of its throne in around 2007. YouTube would start in 2005 and would be bought by Google the following year. The following year after that, Twitter would be founded by Jack Dorsey as the public social media platform. Whereas Facebook was a private social media platform, Twitter essentially operated as a digital public space. Blogs, forums, and image boards would emerge. Dig.com would emerge as a major news aggregator. LiveJournal would become very popular as a blogging website, particularly in Russia. 4chan would become a major popular image board to post pictures of ramen noodles, racist memes, and hentai. However, this was still in its nascency. This was at around the time of the incoming 2008 election. In the previous year, the video Crush on Obama was uploaded by barelypolitical.com onto YouTube. The channel is now known as Key of Awesome. This starred the model Amber Lee Ettinger, also known as the Obama Girl.
Smart, black, and sexy, you're so fine. 'Cause I got a crush on Obama. I wait till 2008.
Some loved the video for its comedy and encapsulation of Obama's memeable charisma, but others hated it.
Obama is a Mac daddy. Obama pimps white women and black women. He got started. You didn't notice him till he brought out those big-chested white women with their tight t-shirts and their short pants. That's what a pimp does. Oh, come on. You don't get your campaign started with a big-chested white woman. She must be a 54D, double D, and a pair of shorts on. That's what started his campaign. He put his name on two big 54Ds. Obama! That's where you first saw his name. That's the first place I saw it, on two great big old tits.
Ettinger would be featured on old media news platforms such as CNN and Fox News. While she would fade off into oblivion, her short-lived success would spur the long-term success of political satire with online satirical publications like The Onion. All of this was happening as social media was transforming the internet from a unidirectional medium into a polydirectional medium. No longer was the internet composed of non-interactive personal websites, but rather massive platforms of people communicating and sharing with each other, and sometimes flinging feces at each other. This led to a wider transition from a monoculture to a polyculture. Rather than having everyone watch the same thing on television cable channels or radio stations, one now had almost an infinite variety of content to consume. Yes, you could watch a boring lecture on quantum physics, or you could choose to watch this instead. Reddit would become the center of polyculture, and the website would allow for countless online communities to emerge. Some of these were large communities like Catholics, Democrats, etc. Others were small communities with no real political power like incels, anarcho-communists, and nudists. On the bright side, this subreddit community allowed for a variety of new opinions which would never appear on BBC or PBS. But on the downside, it allowed for a variety of new opinions which would never appear on the BBC or PBS.
Invented highways, invented the very microphone that I use as a musician. You can't say out loud that this person ever did anything good, and I'm done with that. I'm done with the classifications. Every human being has something of value that they brought to the table, especially Hitler.
Old news media outlets, both public ones like PBS, CBC, Al Jazeera, Russia Today, and BBC, would eventually create online accounts on websites like Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, rather than solely rely on, say, cable or satellite television. The same goes for private corporate media such as CNN, Fox News, and CBS. The power of tech founders became so unquestionable that the figures who founded them, like Mark Zuckerberg and others, became memes in and of themselves. Speaking of Zuckerberg, Facebook started out as a social media platform for Harvard students, then university students in general, and then high school students. Speaking of university students, the first time I ever heard of the word meme was when one of my friends told me to join a Facebook group called University of Toronto Memes. The memes usually involve tie-dye backgrounds and lame jokes about everyday apolitical aspects of life on campus. Half the page was composed of Asian dad memes. However, the internet was taking more and more of a political and partisan tone. With social media, people could join Facebook groups, subscribe to YouTube channels, and following talking heads on Twitter based off of their own political ideology and party affiliation. This series created echo chambers of groupthink, where people only heard their own beliefs being reinforced. The other side is deemed to be nothing more than a caricature of stupidity and cringe in the minds of the opposition. And yes, one of these methods of mocking the stupidity and cringe came through memes. The first major social media movement to utilize internet memes was the New Atheist movement, which dominated online discourse from around 2007 to 2012. This movement arose as a backlash against George Bush's support for the Christian right, Pope Benedict's more doctrinaire rule over the Catholic Church, and the threat of Islamic fundamentalism. The lolcowery of fundamentalism provided a never-ending supply of unintentional memes.
Mahanda akasata, reke yamanda raboko sokota, ronda yakande eke seke la mama manda rabakase, meta.
The movement started out in old media through book publishers, with the aforementioned Richard Dawkins' God Delusion, Christopher Hitchens' God is Not Great, and Sam Harris's The End of Faith, along with Daniel Dennett's Breaking the Spell. They were referred to by their fans as the Four Horsemen, in reference to the Bible's Book of Revelations. Speaking of the Bible, one common meme during this era meant to mock Christianity was a reference to Isaiah 34:7, which mentions unicorns in the King James translation of the Bible, the first English translation. The meme was spread across r/atheism and Reddit, as well as the atheist Facebook groups, as a sign of how supposedly dumb Christians are for believing in unicorns. Little did they know that the New International Version of the Bible provides a more accurate translation from Biblical Hebrew to English, which does not refer to unicorns but rather to wild bulls. A little bit less fantastical. I'm pretty sure wild bulls never shat out ice cream.
This is where your ice cream comes from. The creamy poop of a mystic unicorn. They're good at pooping.
This was an early sign that not every meme which goes viral is truthful, even if the meme was supposedly about mocking falsehoods. This mishap did not stop other atheist memes from popping up, such as, quote, checkmate atheist, which was a sarcastic phrase meant to mock Christians who thought they had owned an atheist in a debate, usually by mentioning some sort of bogus rationalization. One example of this was the meme by young Earth creationist Ray Comfort, who claimed that the banana was the atheist's worst nightmare. I'll let him explain.
Behold, the atheist's nightmare. Now, if you study a well-made banana, you'll find on the far side there are 3 ridges. On the close side, 2 ridges. If you get your hand ready to grip a banana, you'll find on the far side there are 3 grooves, on the close side 2 grooves. The banana and the hand are perfectly made one for the other. You'll find the maker of the banana, Almighty God, has made it with a non-slip surface. It has outward indicators of inward contents: green, too early; yellow, just right; black, too late. Now, if you go to the top of the banana, you'll find, as with the soda can makers, they placed a tab at the top. So God has placed a tab at the top. When you pull the tab, the contents don't squirt on your face. You'll find the wrapper, which is biodegradable, has perforations. Notice how gracefully it sits over the human hand. Notice it has a point at the top for ease of entry. It's just the right shape for the human mouth. It's chewy, easy to digest, and it's even curved toward the face to make the whole process so much easier. Seriously, Kirk, the whole of creation testifies to the genius of God's creative hand. It absolutely does.
Unfortunately for our famed botanist, Ray Comfort, he was unaware that wild bananas look like this. Whichever God created this type of banana is clearly an angry, vengeful God. For a period of around 5 years, atheists were on a never-ending winning streak when it came to the meme wars, until r/atheism on Reddit started the quote-unquote faces of atheism, which involved ungroomed, anti-soap millennial males posting pictures about themselves with long-form text telling you that you are their intellectual inferior because they watched Christopher Hitchens debate some creationist and they like to drink more Dr. Pepper than water. This led to widespread mockery through the fedora and neckbeard memes. This depiction of an actor who had nothing to do with r/atheism became the unintentional symbol of online atheism, pseudo-intellectualism, snobbery, and lack of regular bathing. Given that much of the appeal of the online atheist movement had less to do with science, rationality, or even atheism itself, and more to do with presenting one as some sort of edgy intellectual, having the image of the internet atheist move away from the brilliant, aggressive champion of Enlightenment values into a hentai-addicted pseudo-intellectual whose diet is composed of Taco Bell and Pringles meant that the online atheist movement was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone. The movement lived by the meme, and it died by the meme. Around 2012, as the new atheist movement's power was cresting, there was a brief rise and fall of Ron Paul's presidential campaign during the Republican primary. Ron Paul was a prominent libertarian whose mix of hyper-capitalistic economic policy with isolationist foreign policy and fairly socially liberal policies appealed to a large number of terminally online millennials. While the other candidates were popular when it came to old media, Ron Paul supporters won the meme wars, as older voting bases by and large were not particularly savvy when it came to new technology. And the Fed became a meme along with Bring Our Troops Home. They became iconic rallying cries. However, Ron Paul would eventually lose the primary to Mitt Romney, a sign that memes aren't the only thing needed to win elections. The internet isn't always real life. This was roughly around the same time as the Arab Spring. This started off when a Tunisian street vendor protested the government by lighting himself on fire. This led to mass protests in Tunisia, fueled by social media, which led to the collapse of the authoritarian regime. This quickly spread to other countries like Egypt and Syria. Granted, the meme production was rather limited as much of the developing world had not fully embraced social media at this time. But for some reason, there were still a few memes, and one of the most bizarre outcomes of this was that SpongeBob became a meme during the Egyptian protests. What does SpongeBob have to do with dictatorship in Egypt? Absolutely nothing, except for the fact that it was a cool meme during the protests. The Arab Spring would turn into the American Autumn with the rise of Occupy Wall Street. The purpose of these protests were to rally against the corruption on Wall Street, as well as the politicians who were complicit in bailing out the big banks when they collapsed in 2008. This led to the meme of the 99%, a populist rallying cry against what they saw as the billionaire and political class at the height of the Great Recession. Another prominent meme was the Guy Fawkes mask from V for Vendetta.
We are anonymous. We are legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Expect us. You have till Halloween to prove us that you are a part of Anonymous. Otherwise, you will pay for your actions, and you will be an enemy of Anonymous. Anonymous is watching you.
This mask comes from the political thriller movie V for Vendetta, based off of the graphic novel by Alan Moore, which in turn is loosely inspired by the historical figure Guy Fawkes. The graphic novel and movie had strong anti-authoritarian messages, which resonated with many at the time. The mask became a meme, first on the image board 4chan as a symbol for the hacktivist group Anonymous. During this time, one could easily come up with the conclusion that economic populism would become the dominant ideology on the internet and in the voting booths during the 2010s. But many of us were gravely mistaken, as meme winds blew in another direction, towards the identity politics of race, gender, and sexuality rather than class. In fact, there is even a political cartoon/meme alleging that the rise of identity politics was a purposeful distraction from a prospective class war, Banking regulations mess with the company's bottom line. Female CEOs and lawyers twerking do not. However, memes are usually not the product of conspiracies. They are usually decentralized. One major political meme repository was the microblogging site Tumblr, which was very popular during the early to mid 2010s, particularly among girls and young women in high school and university. This is where pronouns in bios came to fruition, along with self-diagnosing yourself with a garden variety of mental illnesses. Tumblr would become a meme haven for the growing ideology once relegated to university ivory towers known as intersectional feminism. This is a worldview which posits that all social dynamics can be broken down into a binary of good oppressed people fighting against evil, icky oppressor people. Woman versus men, black versus white, trans versus cis, thin versus fat. Tumblr would become a meme in and of itself, widely mocked by young men on 4chan, Twitter, and YouTube. This is not only the beginning of a greater gender ideological divide, but also the start of a significant backlash. Tumblr bloggers were oftentimes derided as quote-unquote social justice warriors, people who vaunted themselves as revolutionaries protecting the meek and the marginalized, when in reality these people had it so good that Halloween costume memes became an icon of injustice. Halloween costumes and the controversy around cultural appropriation would be subject to meme mockery on Reddit and image boards, promoting the rise of the anti-SJW movement. Part of this was the result of the new atheist movement, which fell apart due to a debate around the intersection of atheism and feminism through the elevator gate meme. Many young men who got bored of making fun of creationists had moved on to making fun of feminists and social justice warriors, at a time when identity politics had subsumed university campuses and the IRL institutions which many of these young men were engaged in while they were online posting memes and watching porn. Anti-SJWs would mock feminists and SJWs for being fat and having blue hair. Young radicalized women with polychromatic hair became a meme in and of itself. Likewise, young leftist women mocked their male critics as being fat neckbeards. On each side of the ideological and gender divide, anti-aesthetic physical appearances became a meme to belittle the opposing side. Now, is mocking someone for being sexually unattractive, or having hair that harbors a diverse microbiome ecosystem and smelling like expired vinegar a valid argument against someone else's political beliefs? No, but it's still an effective strategy for discrediting your political opponents. This was around the time of Gamergate, which to some was a righteous outcry against corruption in gaming journalism and feminist censoriousness, and to others was a sexist harassment campaign. Gaming was and still is a typically male-dominated space deeply interwoven with internet culture, given that many games are played on desktops. The mainstream media was extremely critical of Gamergate, while online circles were supportive. This was a sign of a growing culture war, gender divide, and clash between old media and new media. Funny enough, the symbol of Gamergate was a cartoon woman by the name of Vivian James, who became a meme in and of herself. With the widespread use of smartphones, which transitioned away from being optional upgrades to the standard Nokia or flip phones into being a mandatory device for pretty much anyone in the developed world, anybody would be able to record bizarre IRL interactions and post them online. Universities would become online meme factories with feminist characters like Big Red and Trigglypuff.
Can you shut the fuck up for a second, too? Rape accusations discredit rape victims, which reinforces rape culture, which is part of patriarchy.
But the anti-SJW meme making spread to other public spaces, such as the Toronto man by the name of the internet title Cuck Norris, who responded to an argument against a pro-life woman by kicking her.
Hey,
destruction of private property. It's against the law.
Somebody gets by somebody and they're like, I'm a 16-year-old and I can't have this baby. Think you should keep it?
It's a baby.
Yeah.
If someone is she gave birth and she decided to kill her 3-year-old child.
I meant to get your phone.
Someone call the cops.
Meant to take your phone.
Do not touch me. Someone call the cops.
Countless instances like these provided nourishing lol milk for the anti-SJWs. However, the udders of campus post-colonial gender studies majors started to turn dry. Not because dumb college girls gave up on their messiah complexes and their septum piercings, but rather due to the staleness of anti-SJW memes. Memes, after all, tend to have a short shelf life, more like raspberries than Twinkies. Eventually, Yahoo would buy Tumblr in an attempt to outcool Google, but this massively backfired. Yahoo never managed to outcompete Google or even Bing, and their ban on pornographic GIF memes led to a mass exodus off the platform, and into the hands of Twitter. Without GIFs of lesbian scissoring, a large sum of Tumblr's left-wing user base moved to Twitter, a website which was already renowned for its, insightful discourse. Meanwhile, the primaries of the 2016 election were in full swing during 2015. Many considered the inevitable GOP candidate to be Jeb Bush, George Bush's brother. However, despite spending Smaug the Dragon's net worth on ads and staff, he wasn't particularly acquainted in the art of meme warfare.
Up is creating a more dangerous world. So here's my pledge to you. I will be a commander-in-chief that will have the back of the military. I won't trash talk. I won't be a divider-in-chief or an agitator-in-chief. I won't be out there blowharding, talking a big game without backing it up. I think the next president needs to be a lot quieter, but send a signal that we're prepared to act in the national security interests of this country to get back in the business of creating a more peaceful world. Please clap. One final point, and it really is kind of the organized.
But you know what contender for the primary was? A man by the name of Donald J. Trump.
Look at those hands. Are they small hands? And he referred to my hands. If they're small, something else must be small. I guarantee you there's no problem. I guarantee it. All right.
Regardless of whether you love Trump, despise Trump, or are somewhere in between, just kidding, no one is in between when it comes to Trump, what we can all agree on is that he has become a master of the internet's most valuable currency, attention. Attention is what feeds the algorithms on social media, something my channel of 4K subs has done a pretty terrible job at least for now. Trump mastered the art of memes through the use of variety and viral clips, using simple, oftentimes grammatically incorrect language.
The Bible certainly is one of, if not, I mean, it is the book. I get sent Bibles by a lot of people.
Where are all those Bibles anyhow now?
Well, actually, we keep them in a certain place, a very, very nice place.
These were memed into oblivion, both by his supporters and his haters. His Democratic rival, Clinton, despite having a level of reading comprehension higher than that of an 11-year-old, was not able to master the art of meme-making warfare.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
Her attempts at moral outrage didn't work either, and created counter-memes.
You could put half of Trump supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables. Right? The racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic, you name it. And unfortunately, there are people like that. And he has lifted them up.
Quote, basket of deplorables, end quote, was used as an insult, but it didn't really work. You can't really attack people based off of their moral character when they hold a very different moral system than you. Attacking people for being immoral when they hold a completely different moral system is a job well done for your adversaries. Clutching your pearls does not help. Trump supporters even tried to host their own deplorable event, which crashed and burned, but nonetheless is a lesson on how memes can be a double-edged sword. Hillary Clinton, being a feminist, should have known this, as feminists have oftentimes owned insults such as bitch and slut in old media and new media. As far as Trump is concerned, this was during the rise of the so-called alt-right, a group of terminally online white nationalists and other reactionaries who abandoned the hyper-moralizing of the now-defunct Christian right of the 2000s and instead weaponized memes to produce outrage, disgust, and vice signaling.
It's Pepe's become kind of a symbol.
To some, back in the 2000s, this would have been unthinkable. The left-wingers were supposed to be the transgressive, edgy ones, while the right-wingers were supposed to be the pearl-clutching, censorious, moralizing hypocrites. It is hard to be cool when you're someone in your 20s whining that there aren't enough fat women in advertisements. The alt-right meme production would start out on 4chan, an image board known for posting crude drawings of, let's just say, JPEGs that your typical human resources Karen would not approve of. The most famous meme of all during this time was Pepe the Frog. The character comes from an apolitical webcomic called Boys Club by cartoonist Matt Furry. Yeah, his last name is Furry. This image of an anthropomorphic frog taking a tinkle and saying, "Feels good, man," would soon be a symbol of hate, totalitarianism, and Mayo supremacy. Matt Fury, or Furry, whatever his last name is, disavowed the use of his character on 4chan, Tumblr, and MySpace, and even killed off the character in canon. However, at this point, the meme proved to be far more famous than the original webcomic. Like, who cares whatever this blue thing is called? What animal even is that? Pepe became such a widespread meme that even the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, added it to the list of hate symbols, along with the Confederate battle flag and the swastika. I can't reiterate this point enough. This was originally meant to be a cartoon amphibian urinating. There were plenty of other memes, such as the Deus Vult meme, used by Christian nationalists. The phrase stems from the Crusades, translating into God wills it, the rallying cry to take back the Holy Land and perhaps even Constantinople from the Turks later on. However, given the athletic ability of your average 4chan user, I doubt the Turkish military is stockpiling on artillery shells for a neckbeard invasion. This was around the same time as the Syrian refugee crisis, which led to widespread anti-Muslim sentiment in Europe, which many sarcastically referred to as quote-unquote cultural enrichment. Memes don't need to be visual images, sometimes they can just be phrases. However, the alt-right would not last long, as the Unite the Right rally became a IRL phenomenon, which led to a massive backlash as many members of the march had their online accounts banned, or at the very least deplatformed, and they were also mocked for holding tiki torches. It's really hard to sound like a badass when you're holding a piece of furniture that belongs at a Pineapples on Pizza convention. One figure who survived this conundrum was not so much an activist, but a meme in and of himself. Nick Fuentes, a white Hispanic self-proclaimed incel, catboy, pro-Taliban, pro-Epstein warrior for the preservation of the white race. Since then, he has teamed up with famous Caucasian known by the name of Kanye West.
We can't say they as
corporate
can we?
press. I'm not using the. I don't use the word as the way I guess you guys use. I'm talking.
It is
about
them though, isn't it? I mean, because
No.
because when you think about it, consider it. In 2018.
What do you mean it's not?
What do I mean? Like, okay, so how about? Are you leaving?
Are you referring to the press?
Speaking of frog memes, other members of this meme-making coalition were less interested in white identity politics and more interested in grand overarching conspiracy theories based around the global elites and frogs and toads giving the webbed limp wrist.
Yeah, there it is, the gay bomb. Look it up for yourself. I mean, this is what they're... What do you think tap water is? It's a gay bomb, baby. And I'm not saying people didn't naturally have homosexual feelings. I'm not even getting into it, quite frankly. I mean, give me a break. You think I'm like, oh, shocked by it, so I'm up here bashing it because I don't like gay people? I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay. Do you understand that? Serious crap. I'm sick of being social engineered. It's not funny.
Alex Jones has always been deeply concerned about the fluids we drink, from fluoride to estrogen in water to fish-human hybrids, and even Pepsi.
We're not going to have Pepsi with baby flavoring in it.
Many of these alternative media sources who dabbled in populist and sometimes conspiratorial beliefs would embrace the NPC meme. NPC stands for non-playable character. These are characters in video games who repeat the same phrases. This would be applied to people perceived as supporting the quote-unquote current thing, be that feminism, BLM, vaccines, Ukraine, whatever it may be. One major political figure who was oftentimes accused of supporting the current thing, or the current year, was the former Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. He managed to become a beloved meme maker in and of himself, being seen as an icon of progressivism, a darling of the mainstream progressive media, while also being a subject of meme mockery by online populists.
That religious charitable organizations have in our legislation so that it can also be changed, because maternal love is the love that's going to change the future of mankind. So we'd like you to look into
we like to say people kind, not necessarily mankind, because it's more inclusive.
There we go, exactly. Yes, thank you.
We can all learn from each other.
Another version of the NPC meme was Orange Man Bad, in which Trump supporters mocked anti-Trump activists, claiming that they were essentially opposed to Trump, less in accordance with his policies, but rather on an ontological level. Granted, I'm pretty sure the average Trump supporter doesn't know what the word ontological means. The NPC and current thing meme would be counter-mocked with the I'm against the current thing meme. This was meant to make fun of those who think that being contrarian is the same thing as being a critical thinker. These contrarians essentially conform to anti-conformity. In other words, if the mainstream establishment tells you not to eat your own feces because it's unhealthy, don't try to spite them by trying to eat your own shit. Another major figure of this growing online conservatism was the clinical psychologist and professor Jordan B. Peterson, who became one of the most famous academics in the world after getting into a controversy over gender pronouns related to Bill C-16 of the Canadian Human Rights Act. This led to a campus scuffle, followed by a best-selling book titled 12 Rules for Life. He would become one of the most loved and most hated public figures at the same time. His most famous meme of all was that of the lobster, which he used in the first chapter of his book, as a framing device to describe social hierarchies. In 2016, the waves of anti-SJW meme battalions would be one of the major factors bringing Trump into the White House. But Trump's entry into the Oval Office would result in a mimetic backlash with the rise of the Women's March, which at the time spawned the largest march in US history in the name of intersectional feminism, the very ideology which the anti-SJWs were fighting against. The gynocentrism of the march was in part a backlash against what is quite possibly the most iconic meme of the election.
It's like a magnet. You just I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything. Whatever you want. Grab them by the pussy.
The symbol of this movement was a Muslim woman wearing a star-spangled hijab. To some, this was a symbol of love's triumph over hate, and to others, it was a sign of fourth-wave feminism's hypocrisy, as many women in the Muslim world are obligated to wear face coverings and headscarves, making it a symbol of the patriarchy. The resurgence of intersectional feminism would occur not only IRL but also through memery. On YouTube, we saw the rise of LeftTube, a group of left-wing video essayists, live streamers, theorists, and other content creators who would start out mocking anti-SJWs and then move on to create content of their own. The most famous meme of this era was probably Mouthfeel by ContraPoints. Regardless of your thoughts on their politics, BreadTube video essays had exceptional video production value. One aspect of the production value that became a meme was bisexual lighting, in reference to the bisexual flag, which is blue, pink, and purple, a color arrangement common in these videos. If you like dick and pussy, then I guess you must also love the color purple. However, the dominance of BreadTube would not last long, as the online community was subject to purity spirals and constant infighting over which multi-millionaire content creator was the most oppressed. ContraPoints provided what is most likely the most memorable iconic meme, summarizing this period of internet history and the online community which dominated it. The IRL world would also create icons, which became internet memes, such as the Trump baby balloon. Fourth wave feminism as a movement had a resurgence with Me Too, in part due to Trump's presidency, but also due to high-profile accusations against Toad human hybrid Harvey Weinstein. This gained a tremendous amount of support and traction online in the short run, but quickly lost momentum due to the questionable accusations that followed afterwards. This is why the Call HR meme became popular on the internet. The point of the meme is to point out that what is considered harassment is oftentimes dependent on who is hitting on an individual woman. If an Adonis is approaching a woman, it is flirting, but if a Reddit mod is doing it, then it's harassment. This would prove to be one of the most versatile memes, pointing out the hypocrisy of those whose moral judgments are based not off of actions but actors. Then came the Karen meme, which was popular for a brief period during 2015 but came out with a vengeance during 2020. The purpose of this meme was to mock the behavior and entitlement of a considerable portion of middle-aged white women, and for some reason they always had the same sort of haircut. Speaking of gender relations, the trans movement would also emerge as one of the most influential of the late 2010s and early 2020s. The LGBT flag would soon be replaced by the Progress Pride flag, including white, pink, and light blue to include trans people alongside black and brown to include people of color. I'm guessing Asians were already included with the yellow in the original flag. But then came a force which would upend the entire meme environment. A crisis would emerge from Wuhan, China, which would take the world by storm. Perhaps it came from a lab, or a bat, or a pangolin. Whatever the origin was, this quasi-organism, which we cannot see with the naked eye, would dominate our lives for around 2.5 years. The pandemic increased anti-China sentiment. Chinese dissidents would oftentimes mock their head of state Xi Jinping for looking like Winnie the Pooh. This was amplified during the Hong Kong protests as well. With the Great Coof taking over the world, so did the Winnie the CCP Pooh meme take over the world as well. The first major pandemic meme after Winnie the Pooh / Xi Jinping was that of the mask. Many populists on the right were highly opposed to wearing masks. The N95 masks are highly effective at reducing pathogens. Cloth masks are less effective but are better than nothing. Here's the problem. It looks like you're wearing a diaper on your face. Many populists hated masks, seeing them as a form of government overreach, while others saw it as a cheap, reliable way of reducing the spread of pathogens. The later referred to the former as mask holes. This was followed by controversies around lockdowns and later vaccines. The most noticeable example of this was the trucker convoy in Ottawa protesting vaccine mandates. Behind this battle of the masked versus unmasked was a battle between individual autonomy versus collective well-being, trust in institutions versus skepticism of institutions, all exemplified by a stupid mask meme. But not even the pandemic would stop another mimetic force. BLM had first rose to prominence in 2014 in Ferguson, Missouri, but had died down in 2016. However, it rose to the forefront with a vengeance in 2020 with the murder of George Floyd. This led to the largest mass protest in US history so far, with other protests taking place across the world, oftentimes with the support of corporations and much of the mainstream media.
You are seeing now these images came and come in stark contrast to what we saw over the course of the daytime hours in Kenosha and into the early evening, which were largely peaceful demonstrations in the face of law enforcement. It wasn't until night fell that things began to get a little bit more contentious. Things were thrown back and forth.
I want to be clear in how I characterize this. This is mostly a protest. It is not generally speaking.
Corporations would embrace quote-unquote woke identity politics in their HR and marketing departments, to the point when it became a meme used by anti-woke people on the right as well as anti-corporate people on the left. This period would be at the height of what was called cancel culture, in which the Zoomer generation had taken up the mantle of cool young people from the millennials, and would use that mantle to be the most uncool hyper-moralizers on the planet, accusing just about everyone and everything of being problematic. Oftentimes searching into old social media posts to find anything and anyone who, let's just say, skewed away from 2020 progressive orthodoxy. Many old school YouTubers like Jenna Marbles and Shane Dawson became primary targets, even though their content was overwhelmingly apolitical. Fast forward later that year, the pandemic would be the primary source in Trump losing the election. An election loss that he would not concede. This led to the Jan 6 storming of the Capitol, starring the QAnon shaman meme. The QAnon shaman was a conspiratorial eco-fascist fueled by organic food and a love of Viking helmets, powered by the hate of Loki and the love of Gaia. The refusal to concede the election defeat led to a meme cornucopia, primarily known as copium, a portmanteau of cope and opium. Joe Biden became the president, and with the Democrats in the White House, right-wing media and memes would soon dominate the internet again, away from BreadTube and LeftTube. This shows us that power in, well, real-life office can oftentimes be inverted from power on the internet. A Democrat in office oftentimes leads to far-right backlashes, and a Republican in office oftentimes leads to far-left backlashes. The anti-SJW memes had a resurgence under the banner of quote-unquote anti-woke. Woke was once used as a term of endearance for people within the BLM movement, but soon was weaponized as an insult by opponents of intersectional feminist identity politics. The most famous icon of this era, if you could call her that, was Dylan Mulvaney. Many anti-trans feminists hated Mulvaney because they saw her as a gay man wearing woman face. Many conservatives also hated Mulvaney, seeing her as a weapon to be used to destroy Christian nuclear family units. As a borderline alcoholic, I personally hate Dylan Mulvaney for advertising Bud Light, the blandest, most boring beer ever brewed in the history of bland, boring beers. This time, the anti-woke trend targeted old media, usually ridiculing Hollywood for an alleged obsession with diversity and progressive messaging. Sometimes these claims were valid. Watching the Indian Velma was a painful experience. But sometimes the anti-woke backlash sounded rather cringy in and of itself.
In this house, there's some whores in this house. There's some whores in this house. There's some whores.
Alongside the anti-woke backlash came the rise and fall of the Red Pill and Manosphere starting in 2021. Meme archetypes like cuck, simp, incel, chad, and others had already existed, but they were not tied to electoral politics. I personally like the Embrace Masculinity meme, but Z's was never able to use his abs to win an election. The most famous figure was For a period of a few months, Andrew Tate was quite possibly the most famous person, enticing the minds of 13-year-old boys to the power of his Bugatti collection. While many have labeled Tate a reactionary, I think he's actually quite a progressive meme maker. Just listen to how he talked about trans people.
I say a 1 and a 10. I mean Megan Fox with a dick. That's the tranny. Or Hulk Hogan with a pussy. That's the girl. This is the question I'm asking. Megan Fox or Hulk Hogan? So you're thinking, well, I don't want to be gay, so I just click the girl, the number 1. You're gonna fuck Hulk Hogan?
You're exactly right, Mean Gene.
Okay, there's a pussy, but he's got mustache and muscles and shit. He's all hairy.
Called you a liar.
It's pretty gay to me.
Seen this thing coming, man.
He got rich by tricking neckbeards into thinking that they were getting supermodel girlfriends to fall in love with them. Imagine thinking that this woman has fallen in love with you, when in reality the person behind the keyboard was this guy. One issue I have with Andrew Tate's entry into the Meme Hall of Fame is that he's against quite possibly the most memeable thing to ever exist. Cats.
Cats, they don't give a fuck about you. They don't care about you. A cat is not interested in you whether you live or die. A cat doesn't care. A cat's just gonna fucking go out and find something else to eat. Oh, most of the time he's out. Then what's the fucking point in having him? He only turns up when he wants food, and he tried to stroke it and hissed at you. He was a fucking horrible cunt.
The Red Pill movement would eventually fizzle out in terms of meme productivity. However, some claim that the Manosphere did use its memetic powers to push Zoomer men into voting for Donald Trump during the 2024 election, giving him an edge he needed to win. Say what you want about MAGA, but at least their memes are more memorable than those of Kamala Harris.
My mother she would give us a hard time sometimes, and she would say to us, I don't know what's wrong with you young people. You think you just fell out of a coconut tree?
Another factor in Trump's resurgence was Elon Musk, who at this point had bought Twitter, turning it into X.com. Even the X and X.com became a meme in and of itself when a neon sign was brought up, and this pissed off the people who live next to the Twitter headquarters. Elon Musk is one of the most prolific memers to exist on the planet, inspiring love, hate, fear, revulsion, inspiration, and disgust all at the same time. Regardless of what you think of him, my favorite memeable moment of his life was him participating in an election in Wisconsin, only to have his preferred candidate flop, in spite of him wearing this cheese hat. Cheddar hats are cool and a great fashion accessory to help you get laid, right ladies? But memes alone are not enough to win elections. Another meme factory that rose to prominence was Piers Morgan. Piers plays the role similar to Jerry Springer. Like Springer, Piers is a mild-mannered man who plays the voice of reason, among a motley crew of guests who shout, squeal, grunt, and blurt pat toward.
We can circle back when you can count.
Okay.
I particularly like the thumbnails. Cenk always looks like he starts off every appearance on Piers' show by rubbing his face with pepperoni grease. While this content is not great for fostering insight and an exchange of ideas, it is fantastic for ad revenue. Meltdown clip. Now, I've been a little bit too US/Anglosphere focused, to put it lightly. I might as well speedrun some of the most prominent political memes from other places outside of the Anglosphere, and what better place to start than with Poland, namely the Poland ball. No, this is not an inverted Pokemon ball, nor is it a crude drawing of the Pokemon Voltorb. It is the Polish flag plastered onto a ball with eyes. The meme first emerged on, I'm not going to bother to pronounce this in Polish, wykop.pl, which was meant to be a Polish version of the aforementioned American site dig.com. The Poland ball quickly morphed into country balls, with all sorts of countries exemplified by balls, and some countries represented with triangles and even rectangular prisms. These balls have been used frequently in online comic strips, political cartoons, and educational channels which cover geopolitics. In many ways, these balls, I have to use that word, balls, have replaced previous national symbols used in print political cartoons, such as national animals. Granted, one major geopolitical channel on YouTube, Hoser, has even combined the two, plastering the flags of countries on each country's national animal. Another mimetic universe hailing from Poland are the Wojak memes. Wojaks were first used on Polish image boards, using purposely crudely drawn images to display quasi-vacant emotions in an apolitical set of circumstances. The meme evolved into very emotional expressional faces, oftentimes to mock one's political opponents, primarily used by right-wingers. Variations of these include Soyjak, Tradwife, Artho, and countless others. To the south of Poland lies the Balkans, a region which has been plagued with sectarian conflict and hypernationalism. The Turks don't like the Greeks don't like the Turks, Croats don't like Slovenians, everybody hates the Serbs, and the Serbs hate just about everyone and everything else except for themselves and Russian bodily fluid. Multiple people groups you almost never think about reside in this part of the world for a variety of reasons. They hate each other, and sometimes this hate devolves into setting up grape hotels for 12-year-olds. Balkan memes emerge online as a way for netizens from all of these countries to mock jingoism, bigotry, and hyperinflation. And yes, I must repeat that they also like pointing out that the Serbs' national duty is to guzzle Russian DNA. Speaking of Russia, Kremlin state media had dominated the meme wars during much of the 2010s. This started to change after Putin passed an anti-gay propaganda act. To my knowledge, there was no gay conspiracy to propagandize people to teabag, unless they were playing, well, Halo or Call of Duty. This led to fabulous Putin memes. By the time Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, many Eastern Europeans had mobilized their meme warfare capabilities through the use of NAFO, which stands for the North Atlantic Fellas Organization, using the Doge meme of a Shiba Inu as the quote-unquote fella, fighting against Russian propaganda and imperialism. The next big memeable conflict was the Gaza war. Pro-Palestine activists utilized the watermelon emoji as their meme of choice, as watermelons include the colors of the Palestinian flag: red, green, black, and white, although I'd consider watermelons to be more pink rather than red. While the pro-Israel side fared very poorly on the information war front, they did manage to produce their own set of memorable memes, namely chickens for KFC. The purpose of this meme was to mock leftist activists who typically would see themselves as supporters of feminism, gay rights, and trans rights, also being supportive of Islamists, who, let's just say, like to give gays bungee jumps without rope. Foreign bot accounts would also play a major role in meme making. It turns out that much of the anti-Indian sentiment, for example, that has popped up as of late, comes from Chinese and Pakistani bot farms. For the first time in human history, pictures and videos of people taking shits in public have been used for strategic purposes. On top of that, the Gen Z protests would emerge in a number of disparate countries, such as Nepal, for various different reasons, oftentimes using the character Luffy the Pirate from the anime One Piece. AI slop would also become a version of political meme warfare, particularly during the Iran War. Speaking of AI slop, it is quite trendy to bash AI. In fact, I made an entire video about the subject, but nonetheless, I'm actually quite optimistic about AI. While social media paved the way for clickbait, hyperpartisanship, culture war, nano brain rot, and echo chambers, AI might actually play the role of a useful mediator, a boring technocrat, telling you the facts that for the most part are there to debunk the bullshit. Perhaps the next 15 years of internet memes will be far less stupid than the past 15 years. Or it could just end up like this.